This broadcast is the property of Codependents Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependents Anonymous is not permitted.
Welcome, everyone, to the CoDA Fellowship Forum. Today's topic is experiences with Crosstalk. Subtitle is My Online Fellowship Group or any CoDA group practicing CoDA principles. A lot of the materials that we'll be talking about today comes from the Experiences with Crosstalk pamphlet, and I'll put a link to that in the chat. This document is available at the CoDA shop, the corepublications.org, and a link to that is included in the chat box. I'm not going to read the whole thing because you can get this booklet yourself and read it. It's about 34 pages. It's I think, very well written. And the introduction, I think, is a good place to begin. Experiences with Crosstalk. Perhaps one of the most difficult things for many of us to understand and practice in a CoDA meeting is the custom of no crosstalk. It is generally accepted throughout the fellowship that no crosstalk is important, but there is less consensus on exactly what constitutes crosstalk and how best to deal with it when it occurs. The fellowship offers this booklet in order to share many experiences about crosstalk, including how different groups choose to define and deal with it. And I think that's where I would say that what I would like this meeting to emphasize is our own experiences in the fellowship and in our meetings in dealing with this topic of crosstalk and practicing safe CoDA principles. So, James, I understand you have some comments you'd like to share with the group. Welcome, James.
Thank you, David. As I was making this up, I went to the group I go to in Paoli, Pennsylvania, and we have a lot of new people coming in all the time. And it seems that some have experience in other 12-step groups, but on last week we had one person turn to another person and start talking. Very awkward time, and one of our members said, "You have to stop. That's crosstalk." And that's so hard for codependent to do, and I was so proud of the person that did it. And it just what the meeting went on, and there was no problem. But I wrote some feelings about my journey in crosstalk. My name is James, and I am codependent. People listen to me here. I wait for my turn, and I express my feelings. It was tough at first to trust that people would not ridicule or laugh at me, but they didn't, so I kept returning. I felt more comfortable each time. In the beginning, I journaled every day, and the feelings kept flooding out of me. When I was a small child, I was taught to keep my mouth shut and do what I was told. Sadly, I did that. I did that my whole life. I thought what I had to say did not matter to anyone, not even me. The words and literature CoDA gave me felt right. When I found recovery, my eyesight was failing, but the vision for my life improved. I could sit in a meeting and listen without thinking of defense or rebuttal. I listened, and the words went straight into my frozen heart, and it started to thaw. I kept calling out from behind my walls of fear, saying, "Can you hear me?" And they answered, "We hear you." All those years I was locked. I was looking down. I finally looked up into those beautiful faces, and I felt myself grow during those periods of silence. There was no need for me to fill the void. The pause gave me the strength to see the changes my recovery had brought. We call it the crosstalk rule, but after all these years, it feels as natural as waking up. I believe the respect and love it shows feels like it has always been there, waiting to hear someone say, "We hear you." And when my morning comes, they said, "We see you. It is safe. You can come out now." And that's all I wrote for this fellowship forum. Thank you, David. I'll pass.
Thank you, James. And welcome to the newcomers. Today's topic is experiences with crosstalk, and is my meeting and fellowship group practicing CoDA, safe CoDA principles. So rather than have a speaker talk about this topic, I was hoping we could open this meeting up to have people so that you could share on your experiences with crosstalk in your meeting and in the fellowship. One of the things that is usually read at every meeting is something called the sharing guidelines. And because this is a strongly preferred reading document, not mandatory, it is open to the group conscience of each meeting to customize the wording of the sharing guidelines. And but almost all of them contain some comment about crosstalk under the heading, "What is crosstalk?" So I'm going to open the forum up for your comments and sharing on your experience with crosstalk and how it's dealt with in your meeting or meetings. If you would like to, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Linda, welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name's Linda. I'm codependent. I really appreciate the rules of crosstalk. It's really helped me be a better listener in all of my affairs with all of my friends and family members. I do find it difficult not to crosstalk at times. By what I do is nod my head, or sometimes I smile, or I'm probably sometimes even furrowing my brow or doing some kind of gesture that is crosstalk. And I've been very aware of that. I'm trying to be very flat-faced. The other thing that I find with crosstalk is that sometimes it's really a funny thing that people are sharing. And I'll give you an example from my experience just last Tuesday. My 90-year-old mother is being scammed. And I shared that situation and how I'm trying not to be codependent in it. And during that time period, I said, the scammer has actually had my mother download Bumble on her phone. Well, that elicited quite a bit of laughter at the meeting. I actually found it funny too. And so for me, that's an example of crosstalk, but it was okay for me to have people laugh at that ridiculous thing that the scammer had my mother do. So it's still paradoxical for me. Crosstalk is, I'm still learning about that, but I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else have some experience from their meeting or in the fellowship on crosstalk that they would like to share today? I'm David. I'm codependent, and I know that. Oh yes, Johnny, welcome. You can unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, David. I appreciate sharing. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm looking forward to listening to you share. the crosstalk or the guidelines for sharing, one of my favorite parts of a meeting. And I really appreciate too that they extend into the fellowship time after a meeting, because for me, um, that's really important, because there was one time after a meeting that somebody commented on my share. They told me they were really uncomfortable with the with a word I was using, and it was um, and it really started a conversation, and a lot of people started telling me I really needed to be careful with what I said and how I said it and the intention, and it created quite a conversation. Um, it made me think about it. It took me a while to realize that what had happened is simply that somebody had commented on what I was sharing. And I thought overall, I think the end result was I realized that it made the whole thing very unsafe. And I knew that if that was left to happen, I wouldn't be able to go to the meeting. I wouldn't be able to participate, because there's no way I could go to a meeting if I had to be really careful about everything I said and worry about who I would offend, knowing, the guidelines for sharing are already there. I'm not going to say things purposely to offend people, but just that one experience, then that was early on in my recovery and with CoDA. Very, very, very formulating. I'm trying to get the right word. Very good in driving home the point of crosstalk for me. But I remember just when we last meeting for the fellowship forum, when we kind of picked this topic, I went and pulled the pamphlet on crosstalk, and I liked that it was a suggestion that CoDA.org they can't force meetings to use this, and that as a guideline, that the meetings that tend to use the guidelines for sharing and come up with healthy guidelines for sharing, they tend to be the meetings that come off as healthier, and they tend to survive more. And that's what I find to be true. And I know that meetings that continue the guidelines for sharing into the fellowship as well, even better. And I appreciate a chance to share on it.
Thank you, Johnny. And Chris, I see your hand up. Welcome. Please unmute yourself and welcome.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, my name's Chris, and I just have two questions because I'm just trying to understand what crosstalk is and how to handle it. So, if someone wants to reference or comment on what's shared in a meeting, shouldn't they have to ask the person who did the sharing first whether they comment on it, whether they can comment on it or not? Does that make sense?
Chris, I think that's a really good question. And my recollection of the crosstalk guidelines I hear in the meetings I go to is that one should always ask another person's permission before sharing or giving feedback. Crosstalk is a little different. Feedback would be something that occurred during fellowship, at the end of the meeting or after the meeting. And one should always ask permission. And if it's not given, one should respect that. Crosstalk is something that occurs during the meeting.
Oh.
And I think that's a little different. It's not the kind of thing that one asks permission about. It shouldn't occur. And I don't know if anyone else has this booklet, Experiences with Crosstalk. It has some wonderful sections in it. Under the heading, What is Crosstalk? It says, crosstalk is anything that interrupts the flow of another's sharing. Basically, any sharing which is not simply one sharing honestly about themselves. Crosstalk happens when you interrupt or turn into a therapist, mother, advisor by telling the person what they should do or get into a conversation about what the other person is talking about. And I am reading literally from the booklet, Experiences with Crosstalk.
Okay, great. That sounds good. I'll have to go back and reread the booklet. Well, the idea of feedback then is if someone contacts you after the meeting and they want to comment on or ask about what you shared in a meeting, then it seems like that person should ask first, can I ask you about what you shared in the meeting?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I would not disagree with you there. I would say that any feedback or comment on whatever, on anything anyone says in the meeting or anything about communication within the fellowship should always be gentle and loving, and asking someone's permission is a good way to begin. Is it okay if I make a comment? Can I give you some feedback on your share? Can I give you some feedback on anything about your presence in the meeting? I think is a good way safe way to begin. And hopefully that is well respected.
Yeah,
I've been in meetings where in fellowship it wasn't respected, and I was very happy to see that other people in the meeting stepped in and said, excuse me, this person said no, they didn't want to hear your feedback. You need to respect that. So I think that the care that I expect to find in the fellowship is healthy and well where I've been. There is a question, I think, how the use of inappropriate language when sharing affects the meeting. And I think that's an excellent part of the aspect of crosstalk and feedback. If somebody would like to share on their experience with the use of inappropriate or profane language in a meeting, online or face-to-face, please raise your hand. And this is going to be hopefully a chance for us to talk about our own experiences with crosstalk and feedback and practicing safe CoDA principles in our meetings. So if you have something you'd like to share on that subject, please raise your hand and welcome. I think one of the most important aspects of the No Crosstalk guideline for me was not only everything that is said about crosstalk being inappropriate in a meeting. When there was no crosstalk and I was sharing, ultimately, I finally got to hear myself and what I was saying. And I realized after a while that a lot of the stuff I was saying was just so much junk, just so much BS. And that I really needed to become more honest with my feelings and what I had to say. That for a long time, I was just behaving very codependently by saying what I thought people wanted to hear. I wanted to impress people with how smart I was, what I knew, and what they should learn from me. And the fact that there was nobody talking to me, that it was dead silent in the room, I got to hear myself and I got to hear what I was saying. And I think that that was one of the best aspects of the No Crosstalk guideline that helped me get in touch with a lot of that kind of codependent behavior I was trying to get away with. So I've always been a big proponent of no crosstalk, no feedback. It's because it was such a big help to me. Yes, Tulaban, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Taliban Codependent. I'll share my experience. I'm also part of another 12-step fellowship. I was at a meeting one time, and I didn't know it was in person, and the format of the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting did set, I guess maybe not an expectation, but maybe like a recommendation, suggestion for people who are sharing to limit their use of profanity in their share. And so they always say in that meeting, the lack of profanity never hurt anyone. And so there was an individual that shared, and he was using profanity, and there was another individual in the group that interjected in the middle of his share to comment about his use of profanity and to tell him to stop using profanity. And the entire group, I think, was taken back. I was taken back. I had never seen or heard anything like that in my life. But the meeting still moved forward, and I'm glad it still moved forward. The individual sharing wrapped up his share, and that was just something I thought, how is the meeting going to move forward? Like, are they going to duke it out or what? Like, I was honestly a little nervous, but everything moved along in the meeting still. And I'm not sure if the individuals met afterwards or not to speak to one another, but that was just one of my experiences that I saw in my own experience with Crosstalk. I personally love the Crosstalk guidelines. When I came into 12-step programs, it allowed me to actually share, because I felt that the people in my life before 12-step programs, they were interjecting into my life. They wanted to fix me, and they wanted to rescue me, or they wanted to give their 2 cents all the time. And I always felt like my opinion never mattered, because I never felt like I fully was able to share what I was feeling or what I felt I wanted to share. And I always, my feelings of inadequacy partly developed from there, is that, I always felt someone's opinion was better than mine, because I was always interrupted by others in my life. And the crosstalk guidelines allow for me to feel heard, feel seen, and feel like I have a safe space to share what I need to share in that moment. I have a friend of mine. She's a really good friend of mine. We both went into 12-step programs. For her, she shared with me that her experience was that she gave 12-step meetings a try, but for her, she needed that crosstalk, and she needed that. So she found another group, and it's been working for her. So that's been my experience with crosstalk, with people in my life who have, that's just been my experience. So I really appreciate this topic, and thank you all for coming to the meeting as well.
Thank you, Sullivan. Today's topic is experience with Crosstalk. Yes, Kathy, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Hi, my name is Kathy. I'm a codependent. I am not a regular attender, and I may have attended just a total of under, half a dozen meetings over a period of years. So I appreciate the opportunity to hear about the crosstalk as a topic and to give my comment. just wanted to say what David said about how it served him well, the guidelines, because he was able to hear himself and learn from his own words. I can appreciate that. And what Taliban just said about no crosstalk guidelines allowed her to share when she otherwise maybe didn't have that same opportunity and had other pressures in other areas of her life where people were trying to fix. But I just want to say, partly because I didn't make a commitment to the whole program at any given point, but no crosstalk guidelines, while I'm not extremely familiar with them in detail, I found to be, for me, a barrier to not knowing how to work the program, not knowing how to connect with anyone outside of the time of the meeting, not understanding how to work the steps, find a sponsor, may be evident to people because of, you have to maybe participate for a longer time to learn all that. But I just found no crosstalk to be a little bit threatening because I don't understand even how you communicate with someone outside of the group. Like the rules, the guidelines are almost in a way threatening to me. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, Johnny, welcome.
Thank
John,
you.
excuse me.
I appreciate that, David. Thank you. I wanted to add a little bit to what I said when I first joined CoDA back in 2020. It didn't take very long for the guidelines to sharing when it was read that using you and we statements was crosstalk. That's something my higher power pointed out significantly for me, and it was a real shock that was problematic. And what I learned was, for me, that was me giving advice to other people, and that was other people giving advice to me. So I would hear other people say you and we use those kind of statements talking to me, and it irritated me because they were giving me advice, and I would hear myself doing that to other people, and I would know that I was giving them advice. So I always now catch myself, and I always hear it when people share and they use those kind of statements. It sticks out to me, even though it might be read in the guidelines for sharing. I know it's very hard for people not to use those kind of statements. And the other thing I know for online meetings, the emojis, it's not necessarily in the guidelines for sharing, but I did add it in by group conscience, added into one of my meetings to not use emojis. The hearts, after someone shares, to put a little heart up or something, because to me that's like giving somebody a hug. So the online meetings have unique problem with things like that, the emojis. And I think with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Johnny. Yes. How many here go to online meetings, and do you feel that posting chat comments support prayer hands, thumbs up, heart to someone share? Do you see that as crosstalk or feedback? Any comments on that? Yes, Annie, welcome.
Hello, thank you. It's nice to be here today, and I appreciate the topic. Regarding use of chat, whether it's making comments or using emojis to convey some sort of message, in my opinion, would be crosstalk. I think in theory, you could apply the same principle that you would in a meeting. Would you do that in a face-to-face meeting? Would you hold up a sign with a heart, or would you make a comment verbally after someone shared? And in my group, we don't do that. So that principle, in my opinion, would apply to the use of the chat function in online meetings. I think the chat function can come in handy when we're exchanging information, such as putting up a reading so that any participant participating on Zoom could read for us, or a link to a resource, a link to a CoDA pamphlet or something like that. To me, that's the appropriate use of the chat function in meetings. But any sort of comment or emoji referring, before or after someone shares is a comment really on what they're sharing, and the Crosstalk guidelines recommend against that. So that's my thought on that.
Thank you, Annie. I think that's a really good segue to one of the aspects of the experiences with Crosstalk pamphlet. Well, first I'll start out with, how do people feel when there is crosstalk in a meeting? Do I feel afraid to share? Do I sometimes get scared to share openly? Do I feel like I need to work my program during those times? I need to accept that crosstalk will happen occasionally in meetings, no matter what safeguards are in place to prevent it. I'm powerless. And one of the things I like about this book is it has a section in the book that presents the duality of crosstalk. How does a group decide what crosstalk is and establish the no crosstalk boundary in a meeting? Difficulties confronting crosstalk. And then it has, I want to get to it. I think I passed it. Don't want to, while I'm looking for this, would someone like to share on their experiences? James, help me out.
I just ran to get a booklet. Was the one to restate what it was?
Well, I was looking for the section that has like pros and cons, as it were. You and we statements, okay. Different views. A position that it is on laughter, a position that it is crosstalk, a position that it is not crosstalk. On head nodding, a position that it is crosstalk, a position that it is not crosstalk. On touching, a position that it is crosstalk and a position that it is not. I'm kind of old school. I remember meetings, in-person meetings, where people sometimes passed a box of tissues or got up and hugged someone after a share. And I know that has definitely kind of faded from popularity in meetings. Well, now we don't have as many in-person meetings as we used to. But I remember a time when, and here is on handing someone a tissue. Is that crosstalk or is it not crosstalk? On the mentioning of the name of a person who has already shared, is that crosstalk or is it not? People have feelings about this, and their feelings are valid. Not everybody agrees. And what do I do if I'm experiencing something in a meeting that in which I don't feel safe, or I feel crosstalk is occurring? If I speak up and I say something to the person at the time when sharing is going on, that is crosstalk. The best place for me to bring my issues up would be to request group conscience or a business meeting outside of the sharing. And that doesn't always happen. It doesn't always happen that the person leading the meeting is given the opportunity to address issues of crosstalk or feedback, that somebody feels their space is violated to the point that they need to speak out, as someone in the meeting mentioned in a meeting they were in. How do we deal with that in a meeting? I think that a little bit of laughter when something is funny, and sometimes something is said or something happens that is funny, a little bit of laughter is understandable. It can get out of hand. At what point is it crossing that line from normal to acceptable human response into crosstalk and feedback? That's these are very important issues, especially for people in a CoDA meeting. So,
David, if I could interject, I
please,
ran across
welcome,
the room.
James.
Thank you. I ran across the room to get my book from my local meeting. And it says Crosstalk is replying directly to anything that anyone says, evaluating, interrupting, giving advice, lecturing, or rescuing to someone who is expressing anger or crying. This can wait until after the meeting. We do this for two reasons. When we were children, what goes into that? But what it says is that you can respond to the speaker's topic, but not to anyone else's. And that's and then when we were before we were a Zoom meeting, they said about the tissues and about the hugging and all that. So our transition from a face-to-face meeting to a Zoom meeting, I feel that we've lost a few of these things have gone by the wayside, and we have to try to collect them and revamp them because it's different now. And instead of handing them tissues, you put emojis on the board. So we're in sort of a period of transition in CoDA, and we have to evolve with it. And that's what I was doing. I was running across the room to try to get this material off the face-to-face meeting, and I had those I statement cards and the opening prayer and the closing prayer. We used to put tent cards out. We don't do that. We can't do that in a Zoom meeting. And even when we go back to face-to-face, we have to recollect all these things from the past. So the no cross. I love what I wrote in the beginning. I love the no crosstalk rule because it brought me out of myself. Because I was afraid when I went to the meeting. When I went to the meeting, I put a label on myself. I wanted to tell everybody who I was so that they would talk to me. Because I felt like I didn't matter. Nobody saw me. And then when they started to see me, then I started to talk. And that's why it's so important for me to go to events. I love face-to-face events where I can talk in front of people. And that's what brought me out of myself into recovery. So the no crosstalk rule gave me that freedom. So for me, it's a wonderful gift. That's what I was trying to prepare to say. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, James. Are there any more comments or feedback on this? Any more comments or any more experiences from your own experience that you would like to share in this meeting on the subject of cross? Yes, Johnny, welcome.
Thank you. I have one more experience with crosstalk that I'm remembering, and that is in a smaller meeting. When I was sharing, somebody had their they unmuted, and all they simply did was agree with me. And I was, because I'm non-confrontational, and I was actually leading the meeting, and I could have said I had to get my wits about me even after the meeting when I was talking to people about it. It upset everybody in the meeting, but nobody, because of codependence, got their wits about them and confronted it. I did realize afterward I could just remind people, please, everybody keep your microphones muted during the meeting. But it was so disturbing even to have somebody agree with me. And it wasn't a huge thing, but it was like, I just need that space to be heard. I don't need anybody agreeing with me. I'm not here to be validated. I'm here to be heard. And to have my share interrupted so simply, it was amazing to me how disturbing that was, and that it was good to talk about it after the meeting in fellowship when it was just a few people. It wasn't most people, but to work it out and know and to get my footing so that if it happens again, I'll know how to handle it.
Thank you, Johnny. I did see a hand up briefly. Yes, Tammy, would you welcome?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much. I am a codependent. I am Tammy. This is my reconnection with codependency groups. I participated in in-person group probably about 10, 12 years ago, and started just kind of doing some research on how I could get involved with something again, and came across this online forum today. So my hope is, I'm in a very small rural area with not a lot of this type of groups available. So I was also hoping to maybe find a little more information about how I could be directed into, finding out how to start a group. But from my own experience, I think me as a codependent, I have been at different places in my journey. And so at some point, I think maybe I did need some validation by people actually responding to what I was saying, because for a big part of my journey, I always felt like I was dismissed and minimized and not heard. And I felt overlooked and uncared for. And so I think when I shared, in person years ago, if someone would give me eye contact or even just a little nod, it helped me to feel validated and heard. But as I've progressed through the years and in my journey, I don't need that as much now. And I think that I'm able to speak from a real place and allow myself to be vulnerable without caring what others think as much, or needing to know that someone heard me as much. So, it's maybe a little bit of a complex issue because people are at different places in their journeys too. So thank you for listening and letting me share that.
Thank you, Tammy. If you can stick around for fellowship at the end of the meeting, I'd love to chat with you about the question you asked regarding starting a meeting. Taliban, welcome.
Thank you. I was just sitting here and thinking about a couple more crosstalk instances that I have experienced. So recently I went to a meeting, and it was my first time attending the meeting, and I didn't know, the format. I had joined late, and so they were already into sharing. And so I was just listening. And then I noticed that the chairperson was providing feedback on every person that shared, and it made me leave the meeting because I did not like that format. And I was grateful I was able to recognize that, because I stayed for I would say about 20 minutes, so at least a quarter of the meeting. And for me, I feel like in my recovery now, I'm able to give myself that that choice of, okay, this doesn't suit me. I don't like this. I don't have to stay here and I can leave. And so that really comes from my higher power is I feel that was, in my experience, like my higher power is the one that gives me the power of choice. And so I left and I thought, well, the people that stayed, like that's what fits them and suits them, and I don't have to judge them. I can just move on with my life. There was also another experience years ago in my other 12-step program. There's a meeting in person nearby me, and I didn't realize, I walked into it, I didn't realize the meeting, they crosstalk, like anyone crosstalk. So it just felt like people, like a discussion. And I sat there very uncomfortable because I was early in my recovery and I didn't want to share. And so I never went back to that meeting, but it's given me points of views and different experiences of crosstalk and how it is different for everyone on their journey. So I will say, if anything, CoDA has taught me, CoDA and other 12-step programs have taught me that I can just listen, and that's like my only job for myself sometimes in my recovery is to show up and listen, because perhaps my higher power is guiding me to just listen, because perhaps my higher power is telling me I need to hear whoever is sharing in that meeting for that time. So with that said, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Tillen. Laura, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to share, I attend 2 online meetings regularly that have sharing guidelines and discuss no crosstalk and specific examples of what that is. But what these 2 meetings also have is a 30-second rule. So if crosstalk happens and someone feels unsafe, then they can call a 30-second timeout where the meeting stops and everyone is silent for 30 seconds, or the serenity prayer can be read, and it resets the meeting back to safety. And it's not that crosstalk happens very often at all in these meetings, but if it ever does, or in the case of a Zoom bomber or something like that, taking the 30 seconds to reset the meeting back to safety has been very helpful. And I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for mentioning that. And yes, if you are accessing the recordings, last year there was a fellowship forum exactly on the topic of 30-second timeout. And it is useful. So thank you for pointing that out. Please stick around for fellowship after the close of the meeting. That is all the time we have for today's topic and sharing today. Our next fellowship forum is February. I wrote it down. If I could find it. I can't find it now. That's too bad. February next Is February, I'm going to have to
24th.
look it up. Help? Again.
24th.
February 24th. Yes, February 24th. Topic to be announced. And we meet on the last Saturday of every month at 12 noon Pacific time, 1 p.m. Mountain time, except when it is daylight saving time, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, and 4 p.m. Atlantic time.